Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Coach Red, where we bring you all the news stories, takes, and opinions about your favorite teams from the Pacific Northwest, from the good to the bad to the Mariners.
The sweet, bittersweet Seahawks, baby.
Well, I don't know why you're talking about that because that's a Mariners episode. We're going to be going over all of the free agent signings that they've done so far this season. Oh, we're still at zero. So I guess we will talk about the Seahawks.
Oh,
Um, Seahawks missed the playoffs due to a tiebreaker with the Rams. So best record to not make the playoffs, only 10-win team, not in the playoffs.
mhm.
Um, Up and down year for sure. We touched on that on the last episode, and we will be breaking it down a little bit, but mainly looking at the season as a whole, a little bit about what Mike MacDonald has done, who's going to be on this team next year, not going to be on the team next year, and a coaching search almost a year to the day, right? We're having the same combo, but this one's a little different.
Yep.
But before we dive into all that, why don't I tell you a little bit about us? If you're looking for a guy that is just going to channel his inner John Clayton and drop some professor type knowledge on you in this episode, dropping names, dropping funky stats, perfect recall. I might even mess up a few names like Juju Schuster Smith. That was his favorite one. He'd always get it backwards. If you're looking for a guy like that, you're looking for a guy like me, your boy, Coach Red. You can find me on X at the Real Coach Red, on Instagram at the Real _ Coach Red, TikTok at the Real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, leave a comment or two. And if you're looking for someone that is going to give it their all on the first half, he's going to be the exact opposite of that mean guy. It's like they thought that they had him in the first, they thought they had us in the first half, but they didn't. He's going to be first half strong
That's
and
true.
second half wrong. That's a guy named Cain.
Yep. I'm Kane. You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406, TikTok, Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
So Seahawks just missed out on the playoffs and was a lot of the Seahawks not playing complementary ball throughout the entirety of the year. You'd have certain games or certain halves where the defense would show up, but the offense wouldn't. When the offense was showing up, the defense wasn't showing up. So, but you've got a first time head coach, youngest in the league. You've got a first time defensive coordinator. You had a first time offensive coordinator. This
Yep.
is a team that was not going to run it back with Pete. They kind of slogged in the mediocre side, and you saw that play out a little bit this year. Big steps forward defensively. 10 wins is the most by a Seahawks head coach in his first year. And they're road warriors, right? You were bringing that up before the show.
7-1 on the road is absolutely bananas. And your only loss on the road was in Detroit on Monday night.
Yeah, 3 wins at home isn't going to get you to the promised land, though.
No, that's probably the most unfortunate part is they did have their woes at home. You also heard throughout the season a lot of the time
The
there
fans,
were chanting for the other team. That's tough scene.
yeah, I think we kind of touched on a little bit. It's been a weird headspace because the Seahawks for the last couple of years have been right in it till the end. The Mariners have been right in it till the end, and you're kind of in that spot where you need them to either take a big step back or a big step forward. You got to at least be looking forward to the rebuild or rolling on your optimism, right? And they have been there, and it was the frustration of the year, but good things did come out of this year. The defense that had been
Very
really had fallen off
Yeah.
since the Legion of Boom, and Dan Quinn really took that turnaround this year. You saw Spoon get
It,
named as a Pro Bowler, and he didn't have the stats to back it up, which I watch Spoon week in, week out. I don't know if he's a Pro Bowler this year, but
yeah.
I do think that he changes the game in more aspects than show up on the stat sheet.
Yes, I can
Leonard
agree with that.
Williams, beast. He's the biggest snub. He will be in the Pro Bowl as an alternate 100%.
Julian Love as well had
Another
a
good, strong season.
fantastic year. On dude, on Sunday, Julian Love was everywhere.
Derek Hall and Kobe Bryant taking a big step forward this year.
Yes,
Tyrese Knight showing out as a rookie. Jaron Reed looking like a younger version of himself. Them deciding that they did not hit in their offseason acquisitions at linebacker, going and getting Ernest Jones mid-season, coupling that with Tyrese Knight. I mean,
just absolute
Josh
chemistry.
Jobe as a practice squad guy that gets elevated and turns into a starting corner.
And
Reed
how
got his
about
ups and downs, but as a whole, you can see this defense starting to grow.
elevate?
And when you really look at the defense as a whole, there's not a ton of guys that are not under contract for next year, right? So you're gonna see a lot of the same faces. And we'll get into some guys that
Mhm.
are obviously going to be back. Some guys that were probably saw them play their last game as a Seahawk, at least for next year. And then offensively, this was the year of offensive line struggles, inconsistent run game. Tyler Lockett basically getting phased out of the offense, really running a 1-2 show that almost looked like a one show most of the time with JSN,
Yep.
which before I go any further, because I heard a little bit of the Mike MacDonald on 710 ESPN, and he called Jackson Smith and Jigba JSN. He just called him Jax, and I want someone to make a Mortal Kombat version of JSN with metal arms,
Hell
because
yeah,
Jax
dude.
had metal arms.
No, JSN was an absolute like the breakout he had this year was amazing. And I believe there's a clip rolling around, and it's either talking to CJ Stroud or another wide receiver from the group out of them all, like Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, and all that. They're like, who's the best? And somebody's like, nah, JSN was the coldest.
Well, that was Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. Yeah,
Marvin Harrison Jr., all of them when because they were all great at Ohio State. And
yeah.
it's just JSN is different. The difference he made on offense this year with the maneuverability he has, really saw an uptick right after or kind of right before the bye. It's when he really started to take off. He showed off early against the Patriots, but kind of cooled down after that. But damn, dude, the JSN show this year was fun.
And when you talk about one of the areas of struggle too, the running back position, uh, K9 started off hot, pretty injury plague filled season.
Mhm.
After he comes back and gets re-injured, you see Zach Charbonnet really take a nice step forward. You see some more touches for Kenny McIntosh. And I was
Oh
looking at the
my
game
gosh.
stats, and it just seems like when the ball's in his hand, even if he's going between tackle, he's like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hard yards every
Bro,
time. And
let
I
me tell
think that
you,
no matter what happens going into next year, that you're going to see more of a timeshare because you want to keep K9 fresh. He's your home run hitter.
he's on the team.
Charbonnet's also hit some home runs this year, and Kenny McIntosh is a little splash and flash, man. I like him.
Every time I've looked, like, because I was sitting here in this exact spot because I had the house to myself yesterday watching the game. And it was chill because, it's the last game of the season. Nothing really matters anymore. Not trying to freak
They were
out.
eliminated going into the game.
Yeah. And so every time I look over, it's like I see Kenny McIntosh have the ball, and he is just pile driving dudes
I
and
think
carrying them for 8 yards.
I think that he had 7 carries for 42 yards, so averaging 6 a clip.
It was insanity. And I've had these conversations at work. I will put this name into a hat later, and we will talk about it later in the show. But I think McIntosh deserves more carries next year.
No, agreed. I think that he's earned it.
Yeah.
Um,
From not being on the field when Pete was the coach, for what, a year? They did, even though he was projected to play, he just wasn't on the field.
mhm.
And
And
this
you,
year,
yeah.
I loved what I saw in the preseason and everything
Well,
since
this is
then.
year two for him. Last year, when he got healthy, you expected to see him get some carries. He didn't. And even early this year, he didn't really get it either. It was
Mm,
second half of the season.
right.
Um, talk about the tight end group slightly. AJ Barner, I thought really
I
showed
really
out
liked.
more than you expected. I think that we'll get to one of these guys later, or maybe both. You might want to discuss both. I think Noah Fant, when he was on the field, did good things
Yes.
and showed you his athleticism and why you signed him to that type of deal. And nothing was highlighted more than that than the final touchdown of the year, where Gino throws
High point.
a hospital ball,
Yeah.
and gets hit midair, flips, spins, and falls into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. So,
Yeah.
uh, overall, I thought the tight end group was solid, but not spectacular.
Yep.
Um, I'm gonna finish talking with the offensive line. So we're gonna talk about Geno Smith. Geno Smith had to get 185 yards. He needed to complete roughly 70% of his passes, just slightly more. And the team to get a win, to get $2 million per each incentive. He did it. He went out and earned it. And
Yep.
when we look at the season as a whole, you saw what you had with Sam Howell. Granted, that was a day where your offensive line, you were down
A lot.
to Sundell,
Yeah.
and you were also missing a tackle in that game too. So it was rough sledding, but what Gino was able to do with the lack of time on his dropbacks, the
Yep.
inconsistencies in the run game. Yes, the interception numbers were high, but I do think that getting him in a little bit more structure of an offense, you saw in this last game they ran play action pass a lot more, which opened up some lanes for him. Granted, it was against some reserve players, not all reserve, but some reserve players for the Rams. And Geno Smith, MacDonald said it as well. Geno hasn't done anything to not be our starter next year. He's under contract. He's coming in at a reasonable number for the production that he gives you. Are there
Mhm.
some headaches? Sure. But I think the good outweighs the bad on what he was able to put on the field this year.
And a lot of the bad I also can attribute to the atrocious offensive line play we have this year. It's been inconsistent. Every year he's been the starter. And, if you get a little bit better of a line in front of him, I'm just saying, if you even get like a reasonable center to kind of just take some of the burden, right? To kind
I
of,
think Timmy did that
he did pretty
down the
good.
stretch.
He did
What
pretty good for the
I
year.
think that he's locked in, but this was the weirdest line
Mhm.
play and the weirdest storyline throughout the whole year. You knew Abe Lucas was coming off knee problems that ended his season last year early. You were anticipating him to come back, I think, sooner than he did. You signed George Fant to be that guy that fills in. He gets injured week one. Then you're rolling with Stone
Stone
Forsythe,
Forsythe.
who also gets injured. Then you're starting Mike Jarrell, seventh round guy from Finlay. Then Lucas comes back. Then he gets banged up again. Fant comes back. Then he goes back on IR. I mean, it was
He
an
doesn't even
odd
see a
year just at
game.
the right tackle.
Yeah, and it just your right side was not great, even when Abe Lucas was there. I get it. It's
You ran through three guards. You had Anthony
yeah.
Bradford, Satamayo, and Christian Haynes. Left guard, I thought that Laken Tomlinson was
He played all
mid
18.
mid at best.
He played all 17 games.
He
So
was mid at best.
mid at
And
best, sure, but I played all 17 games. Got to give that to him. They really do.
congratulations. There's something.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And Charles Cross had his ups and downs.
Yeah,
Played strong
but
at the beginning of the year, got a little shaky there in the middle, and then I think finished pretty strong.
when when you're having to take the load for a lack of line, there is
Yeah.
you're allowed to slack a little bit.
Your big
Um,
offseason acquisition on the line retires midseason in Connor
yeah,
Williams. Uh,
yeah,
Oluwatimi wasn't even suiting up early in the year. And I think a lot of that was because Sundell could also play tackle
mhm.
and play center. But Oluwatimi, once he stepped in the role, I thought that's when you saw the line start playing quite a bit better
Yes.
in that Packers game. He leaves that game early with an injury, and it's an onslaught. I think that you do have a good guy in the center. He was at Michigan at the same time as Mike MacDonald. I think those two are kindred spirits. He was not happy with him earlier in the year, but that's one thing I like about MacDonald. He keeps people
Oh,
accountable,
I
right?
love it. I love it. That's why Jerome Baker and Terrell Dotson are not on this team anymore, right? And as soon as you saw with the Ernest Jones trade, it was like a switch flipped in this defense outside of the Bills game. Everything fell into place. And that tandem of Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, yeah, Tyrese Knight made some boneheaded plays, right? But he's also a very raw rookie who was taken in the fifth round.
Fourth
I
round,
think fourth or fifth.
I think he was a
Fourth or
fourth
fifth.
rounder.
But they also were going tick for tat for tackles every week. And that's when this defense kind of switched, is when you got good linebacker play.
Yeah.
And you weren't getting that out of those two.
It was hit or miss. I mean, you had Baker that missed some time. Um, all right, but you kind of brought him up already. Let's talk about a couple of guys that are not under contract going into next season for the Seahawks that you anticipate being back. I'll let you start
Oh,
because I
Ernest
know
Ernest
who.
Jones 100%.
Report came
I
out right before the game too that the
they both
Seahawks and his agents were working towards the deal and they decided to pause, which is a weird time to say it right
yeah.
before the game. But I mean, it makes sense. John Snyder, especially for guys he trades for, does not make deals in season. And both sides, I think, are pretty confident that a deal will get done.
Yeah.
Ernest Jones even said, I want Mike MacDonald to be my head coach for the rest of my career.
Yeah. Ernest Jones 100% back. This defense is going to run through him, and we are going to see great things out of him for years to come. Coach, who's on your radar?
Jaron Reed really got
Yeah.
reinvigorated, signed a 2-year deal. I thought last year his play was kind of up and down, very sporadic. Games where you wouldn't hear from him, games where he looked like a world beater, and you saw that more consistently this year.
Yep.
And I think that
Good veteran presence to have on the line too.
it's great. Him and Big Cat. Then you throw in the Young Bucks and Mafe and Derek Hall. I mean, it's
Uh
a fun front, and you got
Dude, I'm
Uchenna
gonna
Nwosu. You've got
and
good leadership
Byron
who
Murphy the
has
second.
produced. Yeah, Byron Murphy. Like that's a fun mesh of vets and young guys, and they're all still playing at a good level, right?
Like, I'm excited to see Byron Murphy year two. I think it's gonna go insane. I really do. This whole line is kind of blew my mind this year.
It's fun.
Um,
It's
it was
fun.
fun. Derek Hall was outside of Big Cat, right? Because I expected Boye Mafe to do what he did this year. He was constantly giving the quarterbacks pressure. Derek Hall was fun.
Derek Hall
He,
was the reason you moved after L. Taylor.
yeah, and he exploded this year, and just Big Cat, dude. Big Cat looked like a young buck out there. Oh boy.
Do you have any other players that you see uh they're not under contract coming back? Because there's
They did waive somebody, and he did play on Sunday because he was on their practice squad again. Artie Burns. Artie Burns gonna be back on this team. He just always finds a way. I like
like
him,
a
man.
Forrest Gump situation. The Seahawks and Artie Burns are like Forrest and Jenny, and the Seahawks just keep telling Artie Burns, "I just can't quit you."
Yeah, yeah. You got anybody else?
No, let's flip the script and go to a few guys that we think will not, that are under contract currently, that will not be on this team going forward. I think I know who you want to kick it off with, which is
It's Tyler Lockett or Draymond Jones.
it was Tyler Lockett who I was thinking you were
Yeah.
gonna.
Uh,
I mean, they kind of built it up like he wore his when he was
Pick.
drafted and
Yeah.
talking about gratitude. I think he could see the writing on the wall. He said that he wants to play again next year. I mean, the production really dipped
You
low, and there were games
get
where DK Metcalf wasn't on the field. So I think it's going to be
you.
tough, but I do think
Yeah.
the Seahawks need to give him an office in the VMAC, and he is the real estate broker for any guy that comes through that place. Tyler Lockett's going to find you a place to live.
I mean, any athlete in all of Seattle, honestly, it's just it's time, man. There's so many plays. I mean, even on Sunday, Gino threw a pretty good ball, and Lockett did his iconic, layout for it, and just can't catch it. I mean, we said it in the Cardinals game, right? He had that back end zone touchdown, locked down, wide open, and he just doesn't have that it factor anymore.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's time to hang it up. He's an expecting father. Um, and just be there for your kids, man. It takes one hit. You don't want to be hit, but there's going to be that one blind side that's just going to
Okay,
wreck
we're
your day.
we're not gonna play that because like majority of the NFL has kids, so maybe they all
Right.
shouldn't play. Get out of here with that. Come on, that
Hey,
we're not using that.
I'm just saying, man. I think it's time for Tyler Lockett to hang it up.
I
And
would
I also don't
agree.
want to pay 30 million to him next year. No, thank you. Coach Red, who else will be on this team next year?
You can go ahead and hit up your second guy.
Yeah, Draymond Jones. You saw the production kind of tick up from him this year, but I think that was more pressure on him as all of the acquisitions that they did do in season means he was getting limited time on the line and had to produce. We seen him get into quarterbacks comfort zone a little bit. He had a couple weeks in a row where he did get a sack, but it's not the player that you sign that quote unquote massive contract to, right?
Yeah, and the cap hit for both of them next year combined is
50 something.
56 mil. In the dead
Yeah,
cap, you're running 18, so you're net positive 36, 37
there
mil.
you go. There you go.
Moves that have to be made.
Yeah, and it's just your line is getting younger. Draymond Jones is getting older. You're probably going to draft another edge this year. Um, he's going to get phased out. So, we were semi excited when we signed him, but then a poor showing last year
Pretty
after
excited.
all,
Pretty excited when we signed him. Pretty excited.
right. But he just hadn't lived up to it. So,
Yeah.
who else you got?
Like Rayshon Jenkins is gonna be a little tough to keep on this team, especially with the emergence of Kobe. Um, I do like Rayshon's ability to kind of be a thumper on this team, right? But I think that you can maybe draft a guy and let them learn a little bit behind these guys and then go from there.
Mhm.
Um, where's my other guy? Just making sure he's still on roster. I could have swore. Where is that chucklehead?
I don't think you're gonna like my next one.
All right, go ahead.
Um,
Don't like it already.
sure. K9 might not be on this team, and I don't
He's
think
on a
it's.
rookie deal.
I don't know if it's.
You can't.
And this is conversations I've been having at work. All
The
right.
rook. He's on a rookie deal. You don't cut cost control players on rookie deals that
Yeah, I
are
know.
effective.
I know. It's just when he was healthy. It just seemed he was more patient in the line and wasn't in the holes. Uh, I didn't like what I saw a lot this year. Sharp and McIntosh both kind of craved the hole and hit it with all they got. So I don't know. K9 just was a little different this year, and
The other
it's
guy
it's something conversations
that
have been happening on the social media side.
those conversations are stupid.
Sure.
The person I thought was still gonna be uh on roster was Farrell Brown. I thought he signed a 2-year deal, but that's one guy I do
I
not want back.
No, thank you. He did. I mean, he had one good play and then immediately got bad. Like he got a lot of the year he was terrible. I only like him because he stiff armed the hell out of somebody.
And then he fumbled.
Yeah. So
Make the most of your
like
opportunities.
get him out of here. He didn't even block well.
No, did not. All right. That's the breakdown on the team. Kind of some things that we're seeing. But big news came out this morning that not a surprise to a ton of people, I don't think. Diehard Husky fans are upset. Not because Scott Huff's still there though.
Yeah,
Mike
he
MacDonald
is.
said that he's a Seahawk now. Um, it's Ryan Grubb. We were super excited about this hire, but you're taking a step up from the college game. This is a guy that, followed Kalen DeBoer, started out at smaller schools, worked his way up with Kalen, did big things. But when you really look at coming in late, being dealt the hand along the offensive line with the rash of injuries and multiple moving parts, and I think the inconsistency that you saw early on too from the health standpoint of Kenneth Walker, Sharp in those spot starts earlier wasn't doing a whole lot either till later in the season. So they part ways, and MacDonald said a lot of it was differences on how they see the game. And you know that Grubb wants to sling the ball, but when he was at the University of Washington, they had a top 5 line in
Yep.
college football when they went to the national title game. You had a
Arguably the best line in college football.
one of the best, and then you throw in um, Dylan Johnson last year, who was just an animal, right? But
Right.
you look at the talent on that squad. You've got Rosengarten is starting right tackle for one of the top teams in the league. Troy Fantnew is for first round draft choice. You've got Parker Brailsford, who was preseason All American at center, who transferred out to Alabama to stick with Kalen DeBoer. You got Nate Capello, who was a stud last year, decides not to go to the league and goes to Ole Miss and is part of a top 25 program. So, like, it's a big difference there. But
Mm.
ideally, it, Mike McDonald comes from the Harbaugh tree. Harbaugh tree is establishing the run, being creative with your passing dynamics, having a good quarterback. But quarterback's not the be all end all, right? When
Mm.
Harbaugh was in San Francisco, he was doing it with Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, right? Then
Yeah.
you look at the differences. You see Flacco, who they relied heavily on the run game, and he was making big time plays when they needed it. Switch that over to Lamar, who brings a completely different aspect to the game, right? But what you could see throughout all of those is a strong run game. And that's not what the Seahawks had this year, because when you have a strong run game, your defense is off the field. They could be a little bit more rested and go attack a little bit more. So they're going to be in the market for a new offensive coordinator. And boy, if I don't have one, two, three, four, five, six different ones that I've kind of highlighted to keep on the radar. And a lot of people are posting on social media today. And I'm going to go with the biggest one because this is the one I added late because I thought you might talk about him. But most of my other guys are not guys that are really being talked about right now. First one is Doug Peterson gets let go by the Jaguars, former offensive coordinator under Andy Reid, has been successful. He's a Super Bowl winner. He did go down and help turn around the Jaguars for 1 year But
Yeah, the Jaguars are a hot
consistent plays
mess.
with their wide receivers, ETN getting banged up again, Trevor Lawrence looking like a shell of himself, especially when you didn't have protection and playmakers. I think this guy that is very well respected, Shady McCoy, had big things to say about him in the positive light that he's a very, very good ball coach. Plus, from Ferndale, Washington. So, local guy to the area, could be an interesting. You get a guy that is not going to be a first time guy. This is a guy that has been in the league for a long time and has been successful not only as a head coach, but also as a play caller, because that's what got him his job in Philly.
Yep, yep. I like that. I do. It's also, hey, look, I can still call games and showcase his skills again. So I
It's tough to get that third go around at HC, though.
yeah, I don't know if he'd be the first choice, in the Mike McDonald regime.
I do think they're going to look for either someone that has experience or someone that has ties to McDonald and the Harbaughs, or someone that will emphasize in the running game, right?
I don't think it's going to be a just full on John Schneider hire.
All right, let's go to a guy that I think can really propel this team. He's been a guy that was a candidate in waiting, it seemed like, for the Philly job for a while. It's Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley is currently the running backs coach for the Browns, and I don't know for how long, but this is a guy that was regarded, he was the associate head coach under Andy Reid, was highly regarded, worked his way up. And when they went the other way and went towards Sirianni, it seemed like they butted heads, moved away. So this is a guy that former running back coach. The big knock on him is he's never been an offensive coordinator, so he's never called plays.
So you're kind of going into
Same
and
boat
even
with a guy with a lot more NFL pedigree than Ryan Grubb.
yeah, same thing, but maybe different, you know?
That's my wild card one though. Actually, I got a few more wild cards, but
Sure.
my next wild card ish is a guy that we talked about during the hiring cycle last year after Mike McDonald was hired. It's T. Martin. He's the quarterbacks coach for the Ravens. He was a coordinator in college, offensive coordinator. This is a guy that I think has upside. He has familiarity with the Harbaugh system. He has familiarity with Mike McDonald because they were both on staff together with the
Mhm.
Ravens. He has not called plays at the NFL level, but I do think that it is an intriguing choice because guess what the Ravens also do? Granted, they have great offensive line, Lamar and Derrick Henry, but run the ball extremely well.
Sure. Yeah, when you put all those things together, they run the ball extremely well.
They do.
Yeah. No, that would also be probably a good choice. He seems to be doing wonders with Lamar. I don't know if it's about him, but I don't think it would be that big of a transition for him to be calling plays because, he knows what the game's supposed to look like. I'm sure he's in the OC meetings all the time.
I would hope
So,
so when you're the quarterbacks coach.
right. So I think he could put two and two together and call some good plays for us.
Speaking of quarterback coaches,
Oh,
what a lead in.
sure.
Josh McCown, current quarterback coach of the Minnesota Vikings,
Oh, former quarterback.
former quarterback and current quarterbacks coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a guy that has gotten high praise. He got an interview with the Texans right after he retired for their head job. I think this is a guy that is highly regarded as an offensive mind, doing big things with Kevin
I
O'Connell.
mean,
And I think that, yes, this is a guy that does not have NFL play calling experience, but this is a guy that was in the league for a very long time. He
played
was
for a lot of different
a lot of
teams.
different teams, a lot of different coordinators. This is a backup, and a lot of times backup quarterbacks make phenomenal head coaches. When we're talking about Doug Peterson, former backup quarterback in the NFL, uh,
A guy who's
T.
getting
Martin.
a guy who's getting head coaching calls. Kellen Moore.
So
And
I do think that that is an intriguing route. He might be getting targeted, down the road for some of these head coaching jobs. But if he wants to up that stock, I think that he could be a good fit. The other reason why I think it's a good fit, he is the quarterback's coach. Grubb was the quarterback's coach. So that fills your dual role of offensive coordinator who's also kind of overseeing the quarterbacks.
right, I mean, this is a guy who's only what 5 years removed from the
I think
NFL,
less than that.
right? Like this guy, as you said, he's seen his fair share of real estate out there. This is just a guy who knows ball, and he knows the struggles of horrendous O line play. He played for the Browns during their woes, so I think he can maneuver things in a positive direction. I was also talking about that today. It's like some teams that do have bad O lines, their OC can kind of manipulate it in a way to kind of protect the quarterback a little bit more.
What's crazy is I didn't tell you my offensive coordinator list, and you keep inadvertently giving me perfect lead-ins to the next people because talk about someone that's creative. This is a guy that has not been an offensive coordinator at the NFL level, former head coach, current offensive coordinator for the Ohio State. It's a guy that was on the radar last year, and it's Chip Kelly. Chip
Yeah.
Kelly right now, with the talent at Ohio State, they are sitting there playing in a semifinal game coming up. This is a guy that left a head coaching job at UCLA. I think he was looking to get a coordinator job in the NFL, did not pan out, ends up going to the Big Ten, where UCLA was going to not be a head coach, but be an offensive coordinator. I think this was him showcasing his ability as a play caller. When you talk about his early run in the NFL, when you look at what he did with Nick Foles at Philly, plus the running game that they were able to accomplish.
Mhm.
Also, the highlight of his 1 year in San Francisco was their ability to run the ball, because I believe that was when Kaepernick uh, had gotten hurt and couldn't throw a football anymore. So they were predicated on the run game. It's a
Mm.
guy that had big success at Oregon, parlayed that to the NFL, had a couple of good years. I think he's been working on rebuilding himself and doing a job of that. And I think they also brought another guy that's kind of similar to him to be an offensive consult. Or no, that was the Huskies. Eric Bieniemy ended up going to the Huskies. Sorry, wrong Seattle team. But I think that Chip Kelly's the guy we talked about last year. We didn't talk about him super heavy, but I do think that he is
Was
a
in the
very
mix.
intriguing guy. His stock is up after what Ohio State's been able to do offensively this year, and they're very bad
Out of the last, like,
doing it.
at
Right.
their second half of their season, yeah, because I know they started off a little rocky.
Well, they had a couple of losses. Right. They lost to Oregon and they lost to Michigan.
Yeah,
And I think that Chip Kelly gives you a good balance of run and pass. He does get creative with the run. I think that that could be a
just have more coordinators on staff too, because I am aware that we did not have a running games coordinator um, on this coaching
sure.
staff.
We can just make all these positions up, right? There's all
Yeah,
these different ones. What
sure.
do you do? What do you really do though? You want to know who the running game coordinator was? Should have been Ryan Grubb, but I guess that's why he's not here. Uh,
Yeah.
that's no slam on Ryan Grubb. Still love him. I wouldn't be shocked if he decides to go back to college and
Yeah,
get a high profile offensive coordinator job, or maybe he's going to take over WSU. I
he
don't know.
could do that.
I don't know. All right. Last guy I want to talk about, probably my favorite name in the NFL. He's a current offensive coordinator, but he is not currently the play caller. The play caller is the head coach for this team. So I think that you can at least get an interview with him, because technically it's a step up, because although he is already an offensive coordinator, he's not calling plays. And that's kind of the step up that you look at. Formerly offensive coordinator with the Lions, current offensive coordinator for the Colts, Jim Bob Cooter. Jim Bob Cooter, I think, did some pretty good things in his time with the Lions when Matt Stafford was there. This was a
Sure.
guy that had that offense kind of humming, right? This offense is Megatron and Eric Ebron and Matt Stafford. Like those guys could go out and make some plays and get the offense rolling, right? He's currently on a team right now that runs the ball very well. There's a little bit of some of the things we talked about with the Ravens. You have an above average offensive line. I wouldn't say there's elite as they have been in years past. You have Jonathan Taylor, who's an absolute stud. You throw in when Anthony Richardson's at quarterback, the inconsistencies just in his play style, but
Yeah.
they were still ripping off big runs when Joe Flacco was the quarterback, right? You still saw a good balance. I do think that him coming to this team, if you go JSN and DK Metcalf, you're going to take that over any combination of Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, or Adonai Mitchell, right? I will take
Yeah.
DK and JSN over any of those pairs. And
Sure.
you get a quarterback in Geno Smith who is younger than Flacco, more agile than Flacco. Yes, he's not going to give you that running game that you saw with Richardson, but Richardson, you don't know where the ball's going when it's coming out of his hand. At least, Gino, that it's generally going in the right direction. And if you have
Right.
time, I mean, the guy still completed over 70% of his passes this year.
That's still insane. Yeah.
But Jim Bob Cooter is my dark horse, and this is a guy that I at first just laughed at the name, and then really got to see his play style. He's kind of went in and out of stuff. When Jacksonville had their resurgent year with Peterson and uh, Trevor Lawrence, Jim Bob Cooter was on staff, and that led him to get another crack at OC under Shane Steichen with the Colts. So, and Shane Steichen, before he came over to the Colts,
OC of the Eagles.
and what were the Eagles very good at doing, even without top, they were doing it with Miles Sanders,
They were doing it
right?
with Miles Sanders. They did it with or no, they didn't. He wasn't there with DeAndre Swift, but they did it with Miles Sanders, a whole bevy of backs when they were there. Because yeah, but the run game was pretty solid for them then. So
And this is a guy where you are getting more of that 50-50 balance, right? Which is what we strive to see. And some of that could be blocking scheme, some of that could be play call development, but there's going to be a lot of names that get thrown out. There's going to be a lot of people that get discussed, and there's going to be a handful of guys that got interviews for the head job. Fran Smith out of the Dolphins. If Mike McDaniel ends up getting there, give me two Mikes. I just want to be like
sure,
Mike. Both
sure,
of them, Mike McDaniel and Mike McDonald. It won't get confusing at all, and no one will ever screw it up. And then you also have like Mike Kafka, who's still the offensive coordinator for. I don't want him from the Giants, but he's still on staff. Those are guys that interviewed for the head job last year that they could potentially target as well.
yeah. So it's gonna be a wacky off season. I can't wait to see what they do. Honestly, I'm bummed they didn't make the playoffs, right? But I'm not like devastated like other people are. It is what it is. You don't lose to the Giants and you're in. So,
Mm-hmm. And right now in the playoffs, you have a couple of first year head coaches that are in the playoffs, but those are guys that previously were head coaches in the past. When you look at Dan Quinn and Jim Harbaugh, right? The other first year head coaches, when you look around the landscape of the league, right? Gerard Mayo is canned. Canales down with the
Panthers
Panthers is
looking pretty good now.
doing better things, but that team wasn't very good. Raheem Morris, they're a team that just
God,
let the playoffs slip out of their fingers, right?
yeah. Like Mike MacDonald had a 10-7 season, and you just couldn't win at home.
Yeah, the Raiders are sitting there as well, where it's like, did we make the right choice? Did we not? So and then the Titans, I think, were the other first time head coach, and they have the first pick in the draft. So to see McDonald as a first time head coach to be at the level that he's at with 10 win, I think that it's a step in the right direction.
Agreed.
Obviously, you took the next step that you hope puts you in the right direction with making the change at offensive coordinator. And it's the off season. The Mariners aren't doing much, so Seahawks bring us news so we can continue to talk about Seattle sports. When
Yeah.
Kraken are in the playoffs, or UW's men basketball starts ripping it a little bit more. Big win against Maryland last Thursday, but close loss to the Fighting Illini on Sunday. But taking steps in the right direction as well.
Sure.
Great Osabor and Zoom Diallo, right? Am I right?
Sure, dude. Oh,
I was
jeez.
right. Go give us a follow on social media. You can find me, your boy, Coach Red, on X at the real Coach Red, on Instagram at the real underscore Coach Red, TikTok at the real Coach Red. Also find the show over on YouTube. Search for Kicking It with Coach Red. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and leave a comment or two. Kane, where you at?
You can find me over on Twitter at Kane2406, TikTok Kane0624. Also follow the show's socials over on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Red Pod. Follow us, follow us, follow us. Do it, freaking do it.
And as always, stay fresh.
Stay fresh, peeps.
Peace.